Hi, everybody.
Hello, hello.
So Janet, who couldn't make it today, was the one who asked for this topic last week, which is conflict resolution. So she asked me to send her this recording. So we're all going to solve Janet's problems today without Janet's participation. I think her biggest struggle is the one that we all realize with agents where they're not employees, right? And if you need them to perform or get their buy-in on something, like how do we go about doing that? Or if something's not going well, what does that conversation look like? So who has this all figured out?
I am open ears.
I mean, I know first what it's worked decently for me has come from contribution. Don't blame and just ask questions and kind of guide them towards what it is. And usually it's a self-realization. They'll self-discover it. And then you kind of help work and guide towards the new system, new solution of some sort of the issue. So like you kind of bypass it a little bit with them self-discovering it. That's where, because I hate confrontation. I don't like it. I've heard I'm decent at it, which is probably not a good thing, but I'm not scared of it. You know, it's like a procrastination. I'd rather just get it done with and get it over than it just like keep over here. So I don't know, come from contribution, ask questions, especially the 411. That's why it's important to have those weekly chats with your team.
Who has a real live situation they're going through now they would like to share? Well, that's good to know. Everything must be going swimmingly, Paula.
Don't be shy. You know you got one. We all have them, so you wouldn't be here if you didn't think you can get some spicy tips from everybody. Just bring it on.
And we can keep it hypothetical. We don't need to get into specific
people.
We
could stop the recording, to be fair, if we wanted
yes.
to.
Okay, I can start. Basically, I mean, and it's kind of the reason why I also wanted to really make sure to be in this call. I'm having a struggle with my team. I'm the director / team leader here in Mexico of one of the market centers. And recently, I don't know if it's the workload or the stress, we recently had like a very successful big event with externals for recruitment purposes and you know, growing database. But recently I've seen in several areas of my team lots of misunderstandings, obstacles in communication, and something that started, you know, like nothing like a big deal, it's now like just compounding and making like a big grudge. And right now I have like both the broker and the MCA not seeing eye to eye. And that will now permeates, right, to the service that we provide to agents and even the service we provide to clients when it comes to funds, condition deposits, like ensuring compliance in the file. So here's my problem. Would love to hear you how suggestions on how to deal with it.
Who's totally experienced that before, where something seems small and then it turns out to be really huge.
Exactly. And I'm in the point where I don't want to take the growth opportunity, for instance, for these two leaders, you know, to really actually just prove our values, like communication, seek first to understand, teamwork, and so on and so forth. but at the same time, it's like I'm the ultimate responsible, right? And it's my clients and it's my agents, but it's in stake. So I also need to make sure that whatever space I give them to grow and to take this as a leadership and a team opportunity, I'm also making sure that we're being focused and trying to solve it, because we do have an operation to run that won't stop regardless of whatever situation we may have with the team.
I think some of this starts with creating kind of a non-confrontational venue to air it out. So, we do meetings called Let's Fix What's Broken. And like, we'll just sort of brainstorm about, okay, what's going on that's bugging you? And, we'll have a list. Okay, well, what do we want to tackle today? Okay, well, what are the factors going into that? And okay, well, and then kind of get people who are involved and who are stakeholders really talking about it and how to fix it, rather than we're here because you won't do this or you won't do that. It's more of, okay, what's bugging you? What's not working? How can we fix our systems to make it work?
Right.
So Angie, I think I'm hearing you say like you've got a preset time frame that's like in our calendar where everyone is coming, and the idea is like it's a technical conversation where you're removing the emotional aspect of your fault that I'm here and I can't figure it out.
Yeah, it's a once a month, let's fix what's broken meeting, and that's what the agenda is. What's not working.
I see.
How do you de-escalate the emotions once they've already started? Does anyone have some experience with that, or some tips around how, if emotions are high, we could bring them back down?
So let's make this more personal. When you feel really tied into emotion, you feel really emotional about something, how do you get yourself out of the motion?
Breathing exercises.
And then once you go through the breathing exercises, Noah, where do you go from there?
Just kind of speaking on behalf of why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, maybe, or acknowledging that it's okay to feel X, Y, and Z way, but kind of giving the vision of what we're looking to accomplish and where we're looking to go directionally. And then I guess kind of like what they deferred to earlier was asking the questions and kind of going into it that way. Emotions aside, which again is easier said than done sometimes, depending on the situation and things that you're dealing with.
I think when you're like in those emotions too, like I personally had to do this, just tell your people, hey, like let's take 5 minutes, let's go think and like decompress and come back. And just kind of table it for a little bit, because like I know personally, if I don't do that, I will say something that I may not be able to get back in because in that moment, like I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, whatever it may be. So I personally had to do that with my admin, with my rainmakers, just in general, just so I have time to process what's happening.
So what's happening both with you, Samantha, and Noah, as you share, is you're actually moving from emotion into neutral. So like breathing exercises or taking that break, you're moving into a neutral position. And then you can move into logic. It's really hard to go straight from emotion into logic, right? You can get pushback. Yet if you think of it, how do I get this situation to neutral right now? So then we can go into logic. Then you can work through whatever that activity is. Like Samantha said, it may be, hey, let's just take a 5-minute bathroom break. And then let's come back and resolve this issue or solve this problem.
I also think there's power in mediation too, having that third party that can control that situation. That, you know, again, if it's not me necessarily in that emotional state, or, you know, if I'm that mediator, is being able to talk through that. But if it's just two people in a room, sometimes that can, you know, that can be more challenging than if there's three, but I wouldn't say having any more than three in the room for that. But I think there is power in having a mediator. I mean, just like in marriage relationships and getting counselors and things like that, that there is, I think there's power in that to find that neutral ground if two parties can't do that together.
I was going to say, I think it also depends, because in thinking about this, like, I will deal with that person who's emotional or there's a conflict different. I mean, I have to know who they are, what their, like, their disc, or just how to talk to them. So I do it different with one of my rainmakers than the other one.
That is a really, really great point. Like, know who your audience is and how they communicate.
I do a lot of mirroring and matching. So I get a lot of people calling me very hot. And I think the most frustrating thing is to not feel like your emotions are being heard. So I'll match them to let them vent, to get it out, to get that emotion out. And then we'll either separate for a second so they can like take a breath, or we slowly start to like transition to find that logic.
Haley, that's been a key thing with me too, like in customer service. You match them, you let them air their feelings and everything. And then how do you want us to solve this, right? You move them immediately from the problem into the solution, and you're moving them out of emotion into logic.
I think I've also had to ask, because I think everything needs a solution, and that's not always the case. So I've learned to ask, if, especially with one of my rainmakers, are we just venting to get something out or to talk it through, or what is needed from me? And that's been helpful, that I don't just jump in and look for a solution when really one isn't needed.
I was just talking about that with Emily Richard, who wanted to be here but had a pre-scheduled meeting with a different coach. And we were discussing how sometimes some personality types are going to push for every little thing to have a next step or a resolution, and other personality types are going to come to talk. They just want to talk about it. And it will be really frustrating, like emotions will escalate if each one is trying to get something from the other one. They're not there to give. So great point, Sally. Like sometimes we just need clarity. Are we here, like, are we venting, or are we solving this problem together? I just want to talk about it. Okay, go.
So I know when Janet brought this in, just because I know Janet's team and what she's struggling with, when Janet brought this in, her struggle is with agents not meeting expectations, her having to have difficult conversations and yet not knowing how to have those conversations because they're not employees. She comes from a corporate background where everybody was an employee and you could have an employee conversation, right? Now she's having to have conversations with agents who are independent contractors. And she has to resolve conflict with them, and she's struggling with how to do that. What advice would you give her?
My side, I mean, I super relate to that feeling, especially with cappers, because in the end, we want to retain people, we want to make them productive, but especially I want to retain the people that are ensuring my business is running. However, I have found, like for a while, I was avoiding maybe like the fierce conversation such that I could, try to comply, try to moderate, try to avoid that confrontation. I've seen that when value it's genuinely provide, like that you have actual evidence, and I try to have these conversations more than saying, hey, we need a first conversation on this topic, like try to put it into the consultation and first go through their business, such that without me saying, we have supported you, and yes, we have areas of opportunity, this is like the proof that we are trying to work with you and for your business. It has been, like, at least for me, like a good strategy to first talk about business, I provide you value, I give you a consultation, and then we address whatever feedback that you may have, and I give that a space, like, to hear them. And then that has given me the opportunity to at least try to question them. But when they come back with like, no, I don't want it or whatever, they come with a different attitude that is, I just use that topic up front and kind of like not a fight, but saying like this is the conversation only on that topic. I don't know if that was clear. Like I just try to put it into the agenda, but first trying to come from a business perspective on their own business.
So if I understand you correctly, Fernanda, it's you're looking at the world through their eyes and understanding who they are as a person and what their business is. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and like at least with, for instance, with the agents that I've had more situations with, I have found out that when I set up a meeting just to address that specific topic, they already come with an attitude. They already come with a mindset of like, I don't want it. I have tried to talk about it or whatever. But when I actually just schedule a consultation and I start with my agenda on reviewing numbers, reviewing planning, where were you at, what was the next 30 days, and then at the end of that meeting, like putting into the agenda, hey, I know this happened, or I know that there's a situation that we might need to address. Usually by that moment, their attitude has kind of lowered a bit. They're not coming in such anxious mode. They kind of already had like the opportunity to lower the conversation, lower the tone, and then it's easier to have the fierce conversation.
An interesting strategy because it's like they are you like lull them back into their normal, like Paula said, neutral position by not hitting the topic at the top of your appointment, which is an interesting tactic. So they like fall into neutral, and then you're able to have that conversation a little bit more smoothly.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
What about the rest of you? How do you have those hard conversations with your agents?
I mean, I was going through this, Megan, middle of last year with standards on the team and people just kind of being on the team, taking the easy road, making sure my door's shut. And it really helped, hiring a DOS coach through MAPS because our Rainmaker is the OP and now the PB of our office, and she's busy, and there was just not much time or legion for her to lead by example. To business just comes to her. She's been in business 27 years, and so the leading by example wasn't there. She do the one-on-ones with our team, but not, they didn't feel like she cared anymore. And so having an outside person, a DOS coach through MAPS coming in, holding them to their standards and pouring back into our agents. And then also I talked to Cody Gibson once last year, and he was like, look, you can't lead a horse to water and make it drink. We had given them all these leads, given this all of them their business, and new blood was kind of the answer to bring into the team, and stir the pot up a little bit and bring in some new people. And I mean, you have to close minimum 24 deals on our team to stay on the team. And I actually got this from Sam back in February. Her and I were walking to a session together, and she was like, look, if they don't close X number of transactions per year, they're off the team. If it's, December 25th and you don't have that last one or two transactions in there, you better go find an investor or go pay cash for a house and get that transaction. So I was just kind of eyes open, and we've kind of made that clear on our team. So just standards, set the expectation, and have multiple people weekly to help hold them accountable towards those goals. So then it's on them, and it's not on the leadership team that why they didn't meet their goal. So.
And Hannah, thank you for sharing that. I was actually waiting for Zach to say something a while ago about that. He's usually our standards and expectations guy.
I didn't want to jump the gun, but very well said, Hannah. Very well.
Very well said. Yes.
Thank you. Sam Davis has, if she can talk, she's got fantastic standards for her team of how she holds them accountable. And yeah, I mean, her and I, we hit it off on our walk one day to family reunion, and just, yeah, the expectations and things. It's just like, okay, yes, I have to put my foot down. And then because we're doing them a disservice if we don't hold them accountable, because that's their goals. That's their money and income for their family. So, yeah.
And sometimes they know like they're not winning, and they know they have this big decision to make, whether they stay doing real estate or leave, right? And they're putting that off, and they need somebody to just hold them accountable to make that decision. Like they've already made the decision somewhere in their mind. They just haven't pulled the trigger.
Yeah, for me on this topic, to me, it really comes down to it's all about us. I honestly don't think it has anything to do with the particular agent on the team. And what I mean by that is, I think our hesitation to have that fierce conversation or that tough conversation is because we're not clear on what the expectations are. So therefore, it makes it tricky to go in and be like, well, here we are again. What do I do? Right? Because we don't know what the expectations are, or we haven't made it clear to them what the expectations are and how they win. And secondly, we're not clear on what the outcome is if we don't hit the expectation, like Hannah has stated, right? Is the team unified in understanding that, hey, we agreed together, this is how you win, this is how we win, and this is what happens if that doesn't work out.
No.
And that's all about us.
Sam, I would love to hear from you. Like, what are you doing? What's working really well?
Yeah, so when we bring people on, there's a section of the KPA that goes over expectations. I just do that at a much higher level. So I go through literally what your expectations, what our minimum standard is to even be on our team. Like, we want you here. We took the time to go through the hiring process. Now this is what you have to do to be on our team. Typically their goals are much higher than that. So I'm holding them to their goals because they pick their goals, whether it's based off financials, whatever it is. I'm holding them to their goal, but they have to meet our minimum standard to even be a member of our team. And every department has their own minimum standard. So admin, we have a review goal that you have to hit every month. ISAs, we have a goal. Agents, each of them has their own minimum standard. but you get buy-in really quickly because I'm literally talking to them about the minimum standard every piece of the KPA process that I'm taking them through. So every time I meet with them, whether it's on the phone or in person, I'm going over that minimum standard with them. Like, hey, just a reminder, to be on our team, you have to hit this many units a month. Like, how do you feel about that? How does, like, blah, blah, blah. And you get their buy-in really quickly. And usually if they're not okay with that minimum standard, they're not going to continue on to the KPA process. And by the time I hire them and I give them a job offer, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to hit this much. And like, I'm buying into them because I'm going over goals each section of the KPA, not just the motivational interview. So like, I'm finding out really early on what their financial goals want to be. And I'm helping them do the math backwards of like, okay, here, you know, you want to make $50,000. This is how many homes you have to close this year. And I'm also showing them that I care about them. Each week when we meet, I'm reminding them like, hey, John, you've only closed 3 units this month. You need to close 5 to take care of your family and take them on vacation. What can I do to help you close 2 more units so you can go to Disney World or whatever it may be? So I'm just literally pouring into them, and I sincerely care about each of them. So nothing like amazing. I just being a good human to them.
It is amazing. You know, Sam and I have talked before about how she's kind of like not that, like just very factual, like you are on standard or you aren't, which in this case is a superpower. It makes me think of the Susan Scott. She talks about in Fierce Conversations that, you know, sometimes the story we're telling ourselves is, I couldn't possibly say that to this person because they'll react emotionally. And what's the real truth is, we sometimes act emotionally around conversations like that. And so we're afraid to do it. But the reality might be really different than that story we're telling ourselves. So just because it might be true for us doesn't mean we have to carry that into the conversation. So Sam's ability to just be like, well, if you're at 23 and it's December, buy a house, you know, that's not a joke. They're serious about that. Or you're off the team, you know, it's not, there's no emotion there. She's not carrying some emotional baggage into that conversation. It's just facts.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I've learned how to speak each of their languages, which that helps. So like some people I can go in and I can be like, I hate the word aggressive, but I can be a bit aggressive with them and be like, hey, get your crap together. Like it's almost the end of the month. But some of them I do have to be a bit more sensitive with. But like Megan said, I don't really bring a lot of emotion into things, which I think is helpful for me. I keep my emotions out of it. So like when we get done, if I'm frustrated, I may go to like Monica and be like, oh my gosh, why are they not getting it? But I don't do that in that conversation with them. I'm really good about just being pretty black and white.
But too, you set that expectation on the front end and throughout every week instead of getting to December 1st and be like, so you are 15 transactions behind, you better make it up this month or you're off the team. So like that's 2 or not at the beginning of Q4. So I mean, yeah, it's good.
So if you guys look at this, it's never a conflict because she's ahead of the conflict every step of the way, right? Our standards and expectation cause us to stay out of conflict.
Hey, Sam, I have a question. Are you having regular meetings with your team? I mean, usually that's a director of sales type thing. I tend to meet with the agents randomly and have similar conversations, but it's never structured like, let's meet every month kind of a thing. Are you doing something more like that?
So we're kind of unique. Our team is, we just merged. So pre-merge, yes, I was meeting with them every week. Now that we've merged, I'm not meeting with them every week, but I still try to be really involved with them. And I'm also like, our leadership team meets every week, so we know where each person is. So like every week we're discussing like GPS and where each person is on the team. Are they at minimum standard? Are they not? And I'm still like pouring into them. So if they're not on standard, I'm, you know, asking those questions of like, hey, like I know our director of sales is, but I also have a relationship with them. So it's more so of like, hey, talk to me, like what's going on? How can I help you from a different standpoint now? But it's still like that very direct, like, hey, you're not on goal. What can I do to get you there? Type of question. So our team's kind of unique right now. We just merged.
Well, I think one of the things that you were saying though about understanding each of their languages, I think that's something we're working a lot to have ongoing. So one of the things with us going to the 12-week year was, okay, now every quarter we're going through and reviewing, what are our top lead sources? What's our ROI on everything, et cetera. But we've also committed to, we're going to do some kind of session around either strength finders or the values stuff every quarter as well. Because again, my number one strength is harmony. And so anything that upsets my harmony, and people kind of understand that about me is that, oh, okay, Angie's trying to keep everybody happy. Like she's just trying to keep it, keep anything from bubbling up or whatever. And, and then, there's somebody on our team that empathy is like it's in their bottom 2 or 3. And so really understanding, okay, that's just not where their brain goes when you're trying to like mediate something. So I think revisiting that regularly with the whole team and having them break into groups and talk about it helps with some of that of understanding where people are coming from. And then when a conflict does come up, people have a little bit better insight into one another and it may not escalate to a conflict.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like, I visit expectations quite often. So like, I just had to pull out expectations and revisit it with one of my admin because the way that her and I, like, she told me how I win with her changed, and people do change. So I was just like, hey, what's going on? Like, this is how you told me that I win with you and I'm losing with you. Let's talk about it. And like, she's going through some stuff right now. And she was just like, yeah, like, I think my preferred method of like communication about sensitive items has changed because of what I'm going through personally right now. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. We just got to talk about it.
And that's awesome that she felt comfortable having that conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think with expectations, it's just like, I don't know how, just building that trust with them of when something comes up, no matter who it is on my team, I built with building those expectations, that trust of like, if there is a conflict, they feel like they can hit it head on with me rather than like, I don't know, being like catty and going behind my back to like our rainmaker instead of coming straight to me. Or even like, if it's a conflict with another person on the team, they're like, hey, I want to sit down with this person. Can you just sit in the room and just listen? Because you know how to speak their language, but I don't. So our team, we're really good about that, of just sitting down with each other and hitting it head on rather than letting it stew.
It sounds like you've really built a lot of trust with them. Like they know you care.
Yeah. It's been good. And we're rebuilding trust now with the merge, which is even better. Megan knows, she hears about it every week.
What you just said kind of goes into something Noah said, like it's a really nice combination of like sometimes that third party, like I don't really understand them, you speak their language, like will you just come be in the room? And you have a large team, so there's a lot of bodies you could call on for that. Well, even Sally and I have done it before, is like if you don't have a lot of bodies to call on, you can call on people outside your team to come fill that role too. So your coach, maybe another agent or a DOO that that does kind of get both of you, that's a huge leverage point on we're like not talking the same language, like how could a third party help here, is whether on team or off team. You've got Keller Williams family everywhere.
Well, one comment I will add too is the longer that this festers, this goes back to like Fernanda's point there, is the longer this festers, the more unproductive people become on the team, and it becomes a virus. It spreads, whether you know it or not. People feel that negative energy or those tensions, and it makes everybody less productive. So the faster and as seamless as possible you can address that without being, unempathetic the better. I definitely say, you definitely want to not wait too long, because the longer you hold that cup out there, the heavier it gets. So taking that initiative.
Fernanda, is there anything that you would like from this group?
I actually like super surprised with everything that Samantha just shared. I was having a session yesterday with Megan about this, and we were, trying to identify where could I have like an area of opportunity. And it seems to me like I have standards clear, and I'm very task oriented, and that's, reading, and my team can see it, and the whole market center can see it. But when it comes to actual consequences of the standards not met, that's where my whole area of opportunity is. And I think it was, pretty interesting that she goes quite straight, and like without saying like you're gonna be out of the team. It's known, it's identified, right? That's the consequence, and there's like no going back, and it's clear, and it's kind of like we both know it. I think that's pretty great. That's something I could definitely start implementing, because I think that's where my great area could be.
Zach, what's a standard with no consequence?
Just a suggestion.
I know.
This is a great maybe opportunity too, Fernanda, to talk to the group, like what, we were talking about consequences, and sometimes, especially in, we get into our career visioning, our KW hats on, and we're like, they're fired. And there are like other maybe checkpoints along the way, between not following and getting away with doing whatever and being fired. So who has like maybe an escalating scale for operations or agents, something that is a consequence that's not get out?
I mean, I think using the 1 minute manager, or the new 1 minute manager technique with the redirects, that's figuring out what that redirection or the other more preferred action would be. And and having those conversations, like I said, rather quickly, but not having to revisit them over and over and over again. It's agreed upon by both parties that this is the better action to take, and this is what we're going to do.
I just did something for consequences with my TC. We want to get referrals, and she wasn't getting referrals. And so I said, what's your goal? And then I was like, great, celebrate it. You can do this, all that. And I said, what happens if you don't get that goal? Like, what is your own consequence? And we ended up coming up with the idea that she had to come present to the team owner her numbers. And she's so scared of him. So it was like the worst thing ever. It was like Friday at 4:30, and she started to call her sphere to try to get more referrals. And so like she came up with her own consequence, and it scared her enough to work.
That's awesome. Like, to give them the chance to pick their own consequence. Like I've never thought about it, but that's like awesome. Like, takes the release. I mean, it's basically just holding them accountable to their own worst scenario. I think it's pretty smart.
Cameron, by the way, this is unrelated, but Cameron is going to be joining Zach for, next week is our mastermind, like pure mastermind session. And Cameron has consequently this year gone from 0% referrals during the transaction to 30 plus, using some creative tactics. So he's really, it's not like it was a magic wand, like he's really pushed and pulled and struggled and fought his way here. So if you have questions about that, he'll be back next week.
So specifically for our admin, as far as like consequences go, they had a work from home day each week. They choose the day of the week that they have. And if they're not on goal, they don't get their work day from home. They're on goal because they want to work from home one day a week. So if they miss their goal, they don't get their work from home day until they're back on goal. Same thing with our ISAs. Our ISAs love their work from home day. They don't get that until they're back on goal.
I'm assuming, is that something they requested or, yeah?
Yeah, they requested it. They each get, they can't work from home on the same day of the week, but they all have their own work from home day. And that was something that, like, when we were rewriting job offers, they all asked for. And they like love that day from home. So they do whatever they can to not lose their work from home day.
My ISAs don't ever want to work from home, so I've lost my desk. I like now, so now I'm working at home because I don't have a desk anymore.
It's funny, none of them used to want to work from home, and now we have 40 people shoved into like 1,500 square feet. So everybody's like, I'm going home. Like, we are on top of each other, and it's pure chaos. So.
Well, and one of the things we've done with our admin is the 1 day off a month, like one Friday off a month, and then 1 week off a quarter, and really, and even for our VAs, like we're doing that all the way around. And so it's sort of that we sit down and everybody picks their Friday and negotiates and barters for it or whatever. And some of those conversations about, okay, what needs to happen so that there's not chaos when this person's out? Like, what do we need to do to plan ahead? And it's also helped all our cross training, is that, you know, it's one thing when it's an emergency, but if we know that 4 times a year this person's going to be out for a week, we have this, we're getting the systems in place to manage that.
Yeah, that is a solid plan and estimate. If you look at it, this is the big 3 I call that we always should be looking at, right? Your time off, which includes events and training, vacation, all of your time off. 2, in between those, when are you going to do your one thing or your goals? So your 12-week year, what are your priorities, and planning those out, because those may adjust depending if you're front loading the beginning, whatever the expectations may be, or if they're taking vacations, right? And we have standards to hit 24 closed. You'll want to adjust those goals up front to make sure they hit it on time and that they're aware of that. And then the third is your planning time and where that shows up, so they can plan by the quarter, the month, and the week of when they're going to accomplish those, so we can get ahead of the standards that Samantha pointed out and covers with them. It's a great point, Angie.
I feel like half of our conversation today on conflict resolution has been how to set ourselves up to not even have the conflict.
Classic DOO strategy. Just don't have it. Done.
One of Gary Keller's mastermind for the coaches, this last one of my favorite lines is a coach got up and asked the question, was like, how do we coach our teams to be better leaders? Right? Which is like a layup. And I kind of cringe because I'm like, oh no, I'm wondering where Gary's going to go with this one. He probably gets this question a lot, right? When he gets on there. First thing he said is, he was like, I hate that question. He goes, I'd rather people just figured out how to be better lead generators. Because if you're a better lead generator and you're not a sucky leader, which is what he said, like, you just don't be mean, and you focus on the 6 perspectives, the 6 personal perspectives, and you set standards, you'll be a good leader. Right? He was like, the only time leadership comes up is what I was stating, where this is more about us, is we're not clear on the expectations, or we're not hitting the standards ourselves, so we don't want to hold others. We're not following the 6 personal perspectives. right, on there. So we're showing up with that edge because we're not growing, we're behind goals. So now that's stress. So now we could show up in a personality or giving off energy that maybe is not us. And then the other part of it is we don't even set the standards to begin with, right? And Gary Keller just finished with leadership is actually easy. It really does only show up when you're not doing one of those, things, performing yourself, coming in with a positive energy, following the 6 personal perspectives, and setting clear expectations with everyone that's around you.
And resetting those expectations. It's not once said and done. Like Samantha said, she says it over and over and over. It's instilled in them. They are absolutely 100% clear on what the expectation is.
It's kind of like its own little Ritz-Carlton. I don't know if y'all are familiar with like this concept. If you get inside, you go to a Ritz-Carlton, and if you get inside so many feet of someone, like you've got to address them by name, like, hello, Miss Grimes, how are you today? Like if you get within 5 feet or something. It's like, if you heard Sam's layup on that, it's like the whole leadership team knows exactly who's behind, so that anyone on the leadership team, if they get in that within 5 feet, can say, hey, Paula, I hear you're 2 behind. How can I help you? It's like this very Ritz-Carlton like circle around where it's just the culture that everybody knows you're behind and we're all going to circle the wagons to get you. It's like, there is no hiding. It's not like, well, maybe no one will notice and I'll slip by not hitting standard, right? How cool would that be if that just became y'all's team culture? Like we all know exactly where everyone is. And if you get close enough to an agent, you just say, hey, I know you're 2 behind. How could I help you hit that?
It does 2 things. It's like, one, like Megan said, you can't hide. Everybody knows. So if you need that accountability, it gives you that accountability you need. Yet it also makes you feel like they care. Like how many of us have been in a situation where something we're doing is going unnoticed and you feel like nobody cares?
What really works for our team too is like everybody's numbers are on a TV screen, so everybody on our team can see them day to day. So like what I'm doing, everybody can see like my metrics and admin metric, everything. So it's not going as far as just our leadership team, but like our ISAs can see where our agents are at, and they can even say, hey, Kevin, how can I help you today? Like, I see you need 2 appointments. What can I do to move your business forward? So I think that's huge, especially for our culture piece of things of like, it's not just coming from me as a leadership person, it's coming from our admin, from our ISAs, from everybody. And like that domino effect is falling when for me to make money, the agents have to make money and vice versa.
I loved what Hannah put in the chat. The earned freedom through performance was equals the culture. Right. And I hear that, and how I always received it is it's interesting when you hear people talk about those cultures, because I view it as a culture as a result of what we're willing to accept and what we're willing not to accept. And it's very difficult to hear, and yet you go and you look and it's like, I've never seen a losing team have a great culture. Right? It's what we accept and what we're willing not to accept that then creates the culture.
So I've thought of this book like a few times, and it seems like every time Samantha's talking about it, like it comes up in my mind. So she's just following this framework without even knowing it. But it's called Radical Candor, and the whole idea is like if you think of a quadrant, the one side is actually caring about the person, and then the other is challenging them. And you want to live in the upper quadrant where you care and challenge them. But if you're not challenging them, you're not pushing them forward. If you don't care about them, but you challenge them, you just seem like a jerk. And if you're not doing either, you're probably not doing anything good for them. And it sounds like that's kind of how Samantha was running everything. She's challenging them to hit the standards, hit their goals, hit everything. And she actually cares that they do it and has a reason behind it. And so it makes it really easy. I've found when I've tried to do this with my people, like I can be very direct with people that I usually don't feel like I can be if I feel like I'm challenging them directly because I care about them. It's when I don't care about them, I feel like, oh, I can't challenge you because then I'm just a jerk. And so kind of an interesting book, interesting concept there.
Cameron, great bow. You just wrapped a bow on our whole conversation today.
And that book was Radical Candor. If you guys are looking for it, go Google it or Audible it or whatever. Sam is Radical Candor. She probably is who they wrote the book about. It's just like the way she lives her life. So next week is Let's Chat. Next week's Let's Chat is Ask an Ops Coach. So that is usually 20 to 30 people. If you've got a topic you want to mastermind, it's just like this, only there is no original topic. So you show up to the call, you throw out what you want to discuss, and Zach and Cameron will sort of be guiding that discussion. So don't miss that, happening next Wednesday. And a handful of you guys will be in Nashville, so we will see you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.